Jake stared at the auction platform where the pale blue figure sat motionless in chains. The auctioneer's voice echoed through the crowded slave market on Nexus Station, but Jake barely heard the words. His focus remained fixed on the young woman, whose milky white eyes stared sightlessly ahead. Next item, Lot 73, the auctioneer announced. One Valerian female, approximately 20 standard years, damaged goods due to blindness. Bidding starts at 50 credits. The crowd murmured, dismissively. Most traders and buyers shifted their attention elsewhere, already writing off the blind alien as worthless. Jake's jaw tightened. He had seen enough slavery in the Outer Rim to know what awaited those deemed defective by the markets. 100 credits, Jake called out, his voice cutting through the ambient noise. Heads turned toward the human, surprise evident on various alien faces. A Krathari merchant nearby clicked his mandibles in amusement. The human wastes credits on broken merchandise, the insectoid creature chittered to his companion. The auctioneer seemed equally surprised, but continued the process. 100 credits from the human. Any other bids? Silence filled the market. All. Jake's bid had been generous enough that no one else bothered competing for what they considered damaged property. Sold to the human for 100 credits. Jake made his way to the payment booth, transferring the credits from his account. The transaction completed, he walked toward the holding area where the Valerian woman waited. Up close, he could see the delicate features that marked her royal bloodline, the subtle bioluminescent patterns beneath her translucent skin that pulsed with a faint rhythm. "Can you understand me?" Jake asked gently, crouching down to her level. The woman's head turned toward his voice. Her expression remained guarded, but she nodded once. "My name is Jake. I'm taking you away from here." "To what purpose?" Her voice carried the musical quality typical of her species, but it was laced with resignation. "I cannot see to serve, cannot work most tasks. I am as worthless as they claimed." Jake felt anger surge through him, but kept his voice calm. "Nobody is worthless. What's your name?" "I am Kira, formerly of the Valerian noble house of Threnix, now merely property." "Not anymore," Jake said, reaching out slowly to unlock her chains. "You're free now." Kira's head tilted in confusion. "Free? You paid for me. I am your slave now." "No," Jake said firmly. "I paid to get you out of there. Big difference." Jake helped Kira to her feet and guided her toward the docking bay where his ship waited. The Wanderer wasn't much to look at, a modified cargo hauler that had seen better decades, but it was home. As they boarded, Kira moved hesitantly, her hands trailing along the bulkheads for guidance. "Careful of the step there," Jake warned, gently taking her elbow to help her up the ramp. Over the following days as they traveled through hyperspace, Jake learned Kira's story. She had been the third daughter of a minor Valerian noble house, born with a genetic condition that left her blind from birth. When her family fell into debt, she had been sold to cover their obligations. The slave traders had passed her from market to market, each sale reducing her value as her defect became more apparent. Jake found himself increasingly impressed by Kira's intelligence and adaptability. Despite her blindness, she navigated the ship's corridors with growing confidence, memorizing the layout within hours. Her hearing was extraordinary, able to detect subtle changes in the ship's engine rhythm that even Jake missed. "Your ship needs maintenance," Kira observed on the third day. "The hyperdrive resonator is slightly out of phase." Jake checked the diagnostics and found she was correct. A minor adjustment was needed, something he probably wouldn't have noticed for several more days. "How did you know that?" "Sound," Kira replied simply. "Everything has its proper rhythm. When something changes, I hear it." As they continued their journey, Jake began working on his surprise. He had been developing adaptive technology for years, partly as a hobby, but also because he believed everyone deserved the tools to thrive, regardless of their limitations. Humans had a long history of creating solutions for disabilities, and Jake saw no reason why that innovation shouldn't extend to other species. The project took him nearly a week of careful work in the ship's workshop. He studied Valerian physiology, analyzed their neural pathways, and adapted his designs to match their unique biology. The device was small, elegant, and hopefully exactly what Kira needed. "I have something for you," Jake said, finding Kira in the ship's common area where she often sat listening to the ambient sounds of space travel. "A gift?" Kira's tone was puzzled. "I have nothing to offer in return." "That's not how gifts work," Jake said softly. "May I?" He carefully placed the neural interface device around her head, the thin silver band resting lightly against her temples. The device connected wirelessly to a small sensor array he had installed throughout the ship. "What is this?" Kira asked, her voice uncertain. "Just trust me for a moment," Jake said, activating the device. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Kira gasped, her hands flying to her face as her mind suddenly flooded with spatial information. The neural interface translated the sensor data into something her brain could process. Not sight exactly, but a three-dimensional awareness of her surroundings that was almost as detailed. She could see Jake standing beside her, could perceive the dimensions of the room, the location of furniture, even the subtle electromagnetic fields of the ship's systems. It wasn't vision as her species knew it, but it was something entirely new and wonderful. "I can perceive everything," Kira whispered, her voice filled with wonder. She stood slowly, turning her head to take in the full scope of her new awareness. "The walls, the ceiling, how is this possible?" "Human engineering," Jake said with quiet pride. "We've been solving problems like this for centuries. I just had to adapt the technology for Valerian neurology." Tears began flowing down Kira's cheeks, tears of joy and overwhelming gratitude. In her culture, blindness was seen as a fundamental flaw that could never be overcome. The concept that technology could provide an alternative to natural sight was revolutionary. "You have given me back the world," she said, turning toward Jake with newfound confidence in her movement. "Why would you do this for someone you barely know?" "Because everyone deserves a chance to reach their potential," Jake replied. "Where I come from, we don't write people off because they're different. We find ways to help them succeed." Kira moved closer, her new perception allowing her to navigate with grace she had never known. She reached out tentatively, her fingers finding Jake's face. "Your people, they are truly remarkable," she said. "I understand now why humans are spoken of with such respect among the enlightened species." "We just believe that everyone matters," Jake said simply. "Princess or not, blind or sighted, everyone has value." As their ship continued through the vast emptiness of space, Kira began to understand that her rescue was more than just an act of charity. It was an example of humanity's greatest strength, their refusal to accept that any problem was unsolvable, that any person was beyond help. She had been overwhelmed not just by Jake's gift, but by the profound difference in perspective it represented. Where her own species saw permanent limitation, humans saw temporary challenges waiting for solutions. The universe suddenly seemed full of possibilities she had never imagined.